Hey, I hope you guys are doing good today. We are going to be watching some tasting history, and this is the disease of kings. We're going to be talking about gout. I don't know what we're making in this episode, but it all sounded really interesting. I don't know if I knew that gout was like kind of an issue back then, so I think this is going to be good. If you do get a chance, I'd appreciate if you can leave a like and subscribe. It helps me out a bunch, and I will have Tasting Histories video linked in my description below. So be sure to go and give them a follow, subscribe, all that good stuff. Watch his videos; they're excellent. But all right, let's learn about gout.
Here on Tasting History, I cover the history of delectable food and drink, but it turns out that delectable food and drink can lead to one of history's most noble diseases, gout. Sometimes
I like that picture, the gout.
drink
It looks like a
can
little
lead
David.
to one of
It's a little Damon. This foot looks crazy.
history's most noble diseases, gout. Sometimes called the disease of kings, it often followed an indulgent diet of wine, beer, and red meat, like this 18th century recipe for venison with a spiced wine sauce.
That looks good.
So thank you to Trade Coffee for sponsoring this video as we examine the aftermath of eating well.
What do we have behind us? I don't know this one. This one I can't even say I've even seen that one. It looks adorable though. I love it.
Gout, this time on Tasting History. Gout has plagued history's upper classes since antiquity. The ancient Greek physician Hippocrates referred to it as the arthritis of the rich, and he believed it to be caused by the buildup of phlegm in the joints, which was brought on by too much food, wine, and sex. Two of those things being correct. And
Yeah, I would definitely say the third one does not sound like that has any sort of link, but it was crazy times. It was crazy times.
which was brought on by too much food, wine, and sex. Two of those things being correct. And it's actually not a buildup of phlegm, but a buildup of uric acid, which crystallizes in the joints and tendons, causing unspeakable pain. In 1683,
Do people still get gout that's like in today though? Let me know if you know anybody. I'm gonna assume it's still possible to get gout. Like, I guess if you have like a really poor diet maybe and you're really kind of overweight, I would assume maybe gout is probably possible. Maybe.
the joints and tendons, causing unspeakable pain. In 1683, the clinician Thomas Sydenham wrote that the pain resembles that of a dislocated bone, a tension or laceration of those ligaments, sometimes the gnawing of a dog, so exquisitely painful as to not endure the weight of the clothes, nor the shaking of the room from a person walking briskly therein. And while genetics can
That sounds extremely painful. That sounds really uncomfortable.
the clothes, nor the shaking of the room from a person walking briskly therein. And while genetics can play a role, acute gout is often caused by an overindulgence in sugary foods, alcohol, namely beer and port or other sweet wines, shellfish, and meat, namely organ meat and red meat, which is
For some reason, the only thing I can ever think of is that King of the Hill episode where Bobby gets gout. That's like the only thing that I can think of at the moment. But I would assume that this is probably still alive and well, just probably not as common maybe.
or other sweet wines, shellfish, and meat, namely organ meat and red meat, which is why I decided to do a red meat dish today. And since gout was kind of at its heyday in the 18th and early 19th century, I decided to pull a recipe from the Cook's and Confectioner's Dictionary, or The Accomplished Housewife's Companion, by John Knott, published in 1723. John Knott was the cook for the Dukes of Somerset, and so he was well acquainted with that part of society that was most afflicted with gout. However, his cookbook is geared toward housewives. He even opens the book with the phrase, "worthy dames," which is how I want to start my next cookbook, which I'm working on now, though I don't think the publisher is going to go for that.
We should just start greeting greet all women this way. Yes, yes. I would absolutely love this. Yes.
Which is how I want
I'm
to
all
start
for
my
it.
next cookbook, which I'm working on now, though I don't think the publisher is going to go for that. Anyway, this recipe, which would please any 18th century aristocrat, is to roast a haunch of venison. First lard it with bacon and stick it thin with rosemary, then roast it with a brisk fire, but let it not lie too near it. baste it with fresh butter, then boil a pint of claret with a little beaten ginger, cinnamon, and sugar, with a half a dozen whole cloves and some grated bread. And when they have boiled enough, put in a little salt, vinegar, and fresh butter. Dish
This sounds really good, though. All of this sounds like it's going to be delicious.
bread. And when they have boiled enough, put in a little salt, vinegar, and fresh butter. Dish your venison, strew salt about the dish, and serve it with this sauce. Now, finding a haunch of venison on short notice proved impossible, so
Oh
I'm
no.
going to go with a more common cut, which is the tenderloin, but the idea should remain the same. So for this recipe, what you'll need is 2 pounds or 1 kilogram of venison, 1/8 of a pound or 55 grams of bacon fat cut into short strips, a dozen or so small pieces of rosemary still on the stalk, a 1/4 cup or 60 grams of melted butter, a 1/4 cup or 60 grams of cold butter, 2 cups or 475 milliliters of light red wine. The recipe calls for claret, which at that time referred to any ruby or red wine that came from Bordeaux. A half teaspoon of ginger, a half teaspoon of cinnamon, a 1/4 cup or 50 grams of sugar, 6 whole cloves, a 1/4 cup or 35 grams of breadcrumbs, a half teaspoon of salt plus more for garnish, and 1 tablespoon of white wine vinegar. So I chose this recipe because it is replete with ingredients that were said to exacerbate gout. The sugar, the wine, the bacon, the venison.
Yeah, it seems like it has everything on that checklist of gout. So, yeah, I think this was a really good choice.
Exacerbate gout. The sugar, the wine, the bacon, the venison, the butter, pretty much everything in
It all sounds good, though. I bet this is going to be absolutely delicious. I think this could be really good.
sugar, the wine, the bacon, the venison, the butter, pretty much everything in the recipe. So to counteract the gouty effects of those ingredients, I'm going to make something that has been shown to reduce the levels of uric acid, thereby improving a gouty situation, and that is a cup of coffee from today's sponsor, Trade. Now that we have lowered our uric acid levels with some fresh coffee, it's time to boost them back up with this recipe for roast venison. Start by removing the silver skin and then patting the meat dry. Then the recipe says to lard it with bacon, and this is a process of literally taking lard and inserting it into the meat. You can actually get these different needles that you sew the lard into the meat, or
I have never heard of this before, but it actually kind of sounds genius. I wonder if this helps with making it really tender too, because like 'cause fat's usually really good for getting something like tender and like kind of juicy like that.
you can actually get these different needles that you sew the lard into the meat or inject it, which is the one that I'm using. I think if I had a haunch of venison, the sewing method with long strips of fat would work better, but with the smaller tenderloin, just injecting it is probably the way to go. Then take the sprigs of rosemary and poke it into the meat every few inches. Now, if this were a modern recipe, it would have you sear the venison before roasting it. But very, very few older recipes have you sear meat. Usually it's either boiled, thank goodness this is not, or just roasted as is.
Yeah, boiled meat kind of gets a little rubbery. I have definitely like unless you're making stew or something, but even then, like when I make stew, I still kind of I like dredge my meat in flour and then I kind of like sear it all in the pot and then I pour like all the other stuff in it and put everything else in it. So I would say yeah, so like I don't even know if like I boiled like chicken before, but it's kind of crappy. It's really not that good.
Usually it's either boiled, thank goodness this is not, or just roasted as is. So just set the meat on a wire rack over a roasting pan and put it in the oven at 350 degrees Fahrenheit, 175 Celsius, and cook for about 10 to 12 minutes or until the internal temperature.
His oven is really nice. I really like his oven. This looks very fancy. Very jealous of this oven. It looks really nice.
Degrees Fahrenheit, 175 Celsius, and cook for
It's so
about 10 to
pretty.
12 minutes or until the internal temperature reaches about 125 degrees Fahrenheit. Now that's going to leave you with a fairly rare piece of meat. But for venison, you want it rare. If you cook it much past medium, it becomes really tough and gamey, so that's why I think a lot of people don't like it. If you don't like rare meat, you're probably not going to like venison. But once it's reached
That's probably a fair assumption. There's a lot of people that don't like rare. I mean, I don't like my meat super rare. I'm like a I'm like a medium type person, but yeah, I don't know. It's like super rare meat. It's I mean, like I will definitely eat it. Like it doesn't like weird me out, but it's not like my preference. But let me know, what are you? Are you like a rare, medium, well done type of person?
That's why I think a lot of people don't like it. If you don't like rare meat, you're probably not going to like venison. But once it's reached that desired temperature, take it out of the oven and immediately baste it with some melted butter. Probably best to remove the rosemary and then baste it, actually. Then let the meat rest for 10 minutes while you prepare your sauce. So take a saucepan and add the wine, ginger, cinnamon, and sugar
This
along
sauce
with the whole
sounds really,
cloves,
really
and then set
good.
it over medium heat and bring.
I love like any type of wine sauce though. I love it. And like vodka sauce, wine sauce, vodka sauce, I love all those flavors.
Ginger, cinnamon, and sugar along with the whole cloves, and then set it over medium heat and bring it to a simmer. And as soon as it simmers, add in the breadcrumbs and continue to simmer for another 5 minutes until it starts to thicken. The longer it simmers, the thicker it's going to get. When it's about
I have noticed this is another recipe that has added breadcrumbs to sauces, I guess, for thickening. And like, I never would have thought of that. Like, like, that would not ever be a thought in my mind for thickening is to add breadcrumbs.
until it starts to thicken. The longer it simmers, the thicker it's going to get. When it's about done, add the salt and the vinegar, stir it in, and then remove it from the heat and add in the cold butter, stirring until it is fully melted. Then pour the sauce through a strainer so
Oh,
it's
that looks
nice and smooth.
good.
Now, throughout history, game meats like this, and especially rich sauces like this, were often the domain of the wealthy. But I came across this wonderful quote from 1964 that talks about how in the modern age, modern being 1964, pretty much everyone had access to rich, fatty foods. And so, in keeping with the spirit of
Oh,
more democratic times, gout is becoming less upper class and is now open to all. It is ridiculous that a man should.
so is this like gout for everybody? Everybody gets gout now.
Gout is becoming
It's
less
just
upper
normal.
class and is now open to all. It is ridiculous that a man should be barred from enjoying gout because he went to the wrong school. And while it's true that probably even back in the day there was the occasional common person who suffered from a gouty limb, for the most part, throughout history, gout has been seen as a disease of the wealthy and hence a bit of a status symbol.
Was gout like bragging rights then? Like, man, he's so rich, he gets gout like every other month.
For millennia,
Ugh.
gout has plagued aristocratic society and has always been linked to extravagant living. That's why Hippocrates said that it came from too much wine, food, and sex. But he also observed that it only really occurred in adult males. And eunuchs do not
Oh,
take the gout nor become bald. He also says that women don't get gout or go bald until, that is, they pass menopause and then they're subject to both. Though this was in ancient Greece, by the time of the Roman Empire, it seems that gout was really available to both sexes at all times.
I love hearing about like old history, like medical things and like explanations or like what they thought was what for stuff. I don't know why. I think medical history is really, really interesting to me.
It seems that gout was really available to both sexes at all times. In the first century, the statesman and philosopher Seneca opined that in this age women rival men in every kind of lasciviousness. Why need we then be surprised at seeing so many of the female sex afflicted with the gout? He also says that Roman women started to lose their hair more often at this point in time, and I'm not sure if there's any connection. But except for this period in ancient Rome, it does seem throughout most of history that the gout attacks men of especially robust and large bodies, men of large heads.
Oh, it's just a big boy disease. It's just them big boys, them rich big boys.
Now, because it came partly from a rich diet, it was the domain of the wealthy. But throughout history, there's kind of this standing joke that if a poor person did get gout, well, then they just called it rheumatism. And if a rich person got
Oh,
rheumatism, then they'd call it gout. As the Earl of Chesterfield in the 18th century, who suffered from either gout or rheumatism but wasn't sure which, wrote in a letter to his son, he said, "I wish it were a declared gout, which is the distemper of a gentleman, whereas the rheumatism is the distemper of a hackney coachman or chairman who is obliged to be out in all weathers and at all hours."
so what determined if you were given rheumatism or gout? You know, like what's the threshold here of like where does the I guess salary cut off to like make it one or the other, you know? Or is it just like like the like crazy, crazy rich, you know, whereas like if you're middle to upper class, then it's just rheumatism. I don't know.
Coachman or chairman who was
Very
obliged
interesting
to
though.
be out in all weathers and at all hours. And in the Devil's Dictionary, Ambrose Bierce defines gout as a physician's name for the rheumatism of a rich patient. But while it may have been suffered by many, history remembers the elite, as it, of course, always does. And so it was called the disease of kings, because truly it was. Philip II of Spain, Henry VII, and Henry VIII of England. In the 19th century, both George III and the future George IV were sorely afflicted, and Lord Byron dubbed Louis XVIII of France Louis the Gouty, though perhaps
Louis
none
the
suffered so
Gouty.
much as the Holy Roman Emperor Charles V.
I would say that these guys don't all look huge. I mean, they're like this guy looks pretty rotund, but I don't know how accurate this is. Some of the other ones didn't look like they were nearly as big, so maybe it's just the diet itself and not so much of the weight issue.
Though perhaps none suffered so much as the Holy Roman Emperor Charles V. He was often in so much pain from his gout that he was unable to rule or lead an army.
Oh
Like in
man.
1552, while at war with France, he suffered an attack of gout so severe that he had to postpone plans to lay siege to the city of Metz, which allowed the French to strengthen their defenses, prolonging the war. Eventually, the pain became so severe that in 1556 he abdicated the throne, and only 2 years later he died sick and frustrated of the gout before the high altar of his chapel in the
Oh
Escorial.
man.
And it wasn't just rulers.
I can't imagine having that. I mean, this sounds extremely painful and unpleasant, like just in general to have. So, I mean, that just sucks, you know, like that. This seems like something that just sucks. But to have him live with it for this long, it seems like your life would be kind of miserable. I wonder, like, did they have any sort of like remedy for this? Or were they just like, oh, well, like this is just what happens because you have this diet?
Of the gout before the high altar of his chapel in the Escorial. And it wasn't just rulers, but also statesmen like William Pitt the Elder and William Pitt the Younger, and Benjamin Franklin, who, in true Franklin fashion, decided to write a dialogue with his gout. What have I done to merit these cruel sufferings? Many things. You have ate and drank too freely, and too much indulged those legs of yours in their indolence.
Okay, like I mean, like he definitely looks pretty sturdy. So I mean, he looks like he ate pretty good.
Too freely, and too much indulged those legs of yours in their indolence. You reproach me as a glutton and a tippler. I very well know that the quantity of meat and drink proper for a man who takes a reasonable degree of exercise would be too much for another who never takes any. For heaven's sake, leave me, and I promise faithfully never more to play at chess, but to exercise daily and live temperately.
Is this him like pleading with the gout, trying to make a deal? Like, please leave. I promise I'll be better. This is kind of great though.
Never more to play at chess, but to
I
exercise
like this.
daily and live temperately. At that, Madame Gout leaves, though she knows that once Franklin feels better for just a few days, he'll start to backslide and forget his promise to live temperately and exercise, and she will be back very soon. But at least Franklin knew how to prevent the gout, exercise, and eat well. Of course, easier said than done, but he had an answer. But that was
Amen,
to
though.
prevent getting.
Amen. It is so much easier said than done. I know. I know.
Of course, easier said than done, but he had an answer. But that was to prevent getting gout. But once the gout appeared, there weren't a lot of things to do about actually alleviating the pain,
Oh, okay.
though throughout history, people have absolutely tried. The 16th century
I feel like this is going to get wild of like people like what people have tried. I feel like this is where it's going to get good.
though throughout history, people have absolutely tried. The 16th century physician Andrew Boord suggested fermented ox dung should be baked and applied to the joints, then wrapped in a cabbage leaf, though he
Oh my God, you'd be so stinky. Oh my goodness.
Fermented ox dung should be baked and applied to the joints, then wrapped in a cabbage leaf. Though he realized that food did play a major part, and so he suggested that whosoever hath the gout must refrain from drinking of new ale, and let him abstain from drinking of beer and red wine. Also he must not eat new bread, oysters, and all shellfish. Also he must eschew the eating of fresh beef, of goose, of duck, and of pigeons.
Were people back then just like daily drinkers? Is this part of the problem? Or were they like alcoholics? I don't, because I feel like this is a lot of wine. I mean, obviously the food is probably, yeah, I mean, that's kind of like anything that's like too fatty or anything like that. But um the beer and the wine thing though, like it's just like, are they just drinking way too much every day, like at night? Or are they drinking way too much like most of the day? I'm just curious.
Fish. Also he must eschew the eating of fresh beef, of goose, of duck, and of pigeons. In 1653, Nicholas Culpeper claimed that horseradish or ground elder could relieve the pain, and in 1750, the Swedish botanist Carl Linnaeus claimed a diet exclusively of wild strawberries, which he ate from a giant silver bowl, would soothe a bout of gout. Perhaps the oddest food remedy that I came across is from a translation of a 1518 German medical text, Spiegel der Arznei, by Lorenz Fries, which claimed that you should roast a fat old goose and stuff it with chopped kittens, lard, incense, wax, and flour of rye.
What the actual meh? I why? Who thought of this? Chopped kittens? Chopped kittens. What is the purpose of this? What?
With chopped kittens, lard, incense, wax, and flour of rye. This must all be eaten, and the dripping applied to the painful joints.
No.
First of all, kittens?
Yeah.
Absolutely not.
Yes.
Second of all, I really wish that I
I 100% agree. But like, why? Why? Why the kitties? Leave the kitties alone. Like, what the hell?
Kittens? Absolutely not. Second of all, I really wish that I could find the original German quote, because everything that I could find online all stemmed from one translation from 1964 of this text. And I really want to know if maybe it's a slight mistranslation.
Oh, like maybe it's not kittens. Like maybe it's something else. But the translation from that time that he has is that makes sense. Because I would say this recipe sounds super sus.
I really want to know if maybe it's a slight mistranslation, because I really don't want it to be kittens, though wax and
Right.
incense is also kind of odd.
Yes.
But I was able to find the original German text, but it's in 16th century German, which I'm not great at, and it's in a style that I have a lot of trouble reading. I spent some time trying to find it, and I finally gave up. However, if you have the ability, if anyone out there has the ability to go through this text and knows this type of font and can translate, I would love you to find it and confirm, or please
Hopefully
refute
somebody
the
does.
fact that he's calling for kittens, because
Right?
that's just not great.
No.
I'm going to put a link to that original document in the description, so if you go through it and you find it, leave a comment or send me an email. Now, while that may be, in my opinion, the worst remedy for gout that I came across, it's not like they got that much better as history went on.
Oh boy.
The 18th century was rife with different remedies, including pills that were being sold promising to cure gout. Most popular were Spilsbury's antiscorubic drops, which for only 5 shillings a bottle promised to deliver the cure of the scurvy, gout, and rheumatism, ulcers, nervous complaints, etc. Though as they
Nervous complaints? What is that? What's a nervous complaint? I feel like I have that daily. Maybe I need some of this.
scurvy, gout, and rheumatism, ulcers, nervous complaints, etc. Though as they were essentially just vitamin C pills, scurvy is probably the only thing that had actually helped of all of those things. Alas, gout had no cure at the time, and that's why in 1826 William Scott suggested that you just live with it, but live your best life. Drink
Oof.
wine and have the gout, drink no wine and have the gout too. With this saying, intemperate persons that have or fear the gout encourage themselves to proceed in drinking wine notwithstanding. though he at least offered some remedies for the pain. Opium, which probably did work, and then a bunch of folk remedies that probably didn't work.
Yeah, I bet the opium worked way good. I bet you didn't feel anything. I am curious to know what the maybe like more like holistic choices were because yeah, I can't see that those would help a whole lot. But I guess yeah, just live your best life with that gout, you know? Just drink and eat.
Opium, which probably did work, and then a bunch of folk remedies that probably didn't work, like making music to the gout would relieve the pain.
Making music? Yeah, I don't think that's happening. I don't think that's working.
Or taking hemlock, which probably did relieve some pain, but he says that it also could cause impotence and could lead to death. So
Oh my
how
gosh.
bad is the pain?
Well, yeah, I've heard of like some things about hemlock. I think it's kind of dangerous though, isn't it?
That it also could cause impotence and could lead to death. So how bad is the pain? Probably safer, though also ineffective, was his idea of having the pain reduced by having the inflamed part to be licked with the tongue of a dog. Just as
Oh,
ineffective is a story
yeah.
about a man having his dog
I think I would pass on this one. I don't know if I would really want my dog to be licking my toe. It just something about it doesn't seem right.
to be licked with the tongue of a dog. Just as ineffective is a story about a man having his dog sleep in the bed with him. Then the animal appeared to feel all the pains which his master had previously experienced. The gouty may safely try this remedy. If it does not cure them, it can assuredly do them no harm. Sort of cruel to pass on your pain to the dog who didn't do anything and didn't
Right?
even get to enjoy any of the food and drink that.
True. That is true. Although I can't see this actually working, but if that was your intention, that dog deserves better.
Dog who didn't do anything and didn't even get to enjoy any of the food and drink that led to the affliction in the first place. Though there is a story of a dog that did get gout, a dog that was extremely fond of
What?
Burton ale and was remarked to have every symptom of gout, swelled joints, lameness,
Oh
etc.
no.
And then there was this idea that gout was not something to be cured at all, but rather cherished. Because, yes, while it was a painful affliction, it also marked you as a patrician, a man of status. And many writers from the 17th, 18th, 19th century, likely with some tongue in cheek, talk about how gout is a bit of a blessing because
Because they're a connoisseur of the food and wine variety, fatty food and wine variety.
with some tongue in cheek, talk about how gout is a bit of a blessing because it's not fatal and actually can lead to a longer life. For blessed gout, most desirable gout, was a powerful corrector of intemperance. The gout gives a man pain without danger. To crown the honor of the gout, it is not to be cured. There's a letter from 1691 to a Sir John Gordon of the Royal College of Physicians who was trying to find a cure for gout, and the letter is actually in favor of gout, making a case to keep it around.
This is like a weird coping mechanism. I feel like this is like a weird cope. Like we can't cure this and we don't want to change the way we eat, so we're gonna try and make this into something better. Like we're gonna spin it as like you should be proud to get gout. Then just keep eating that fatty food and drinking that wine.
Is actually in favor of gout, making a case to keep it around. The author says that he has had gout for 20 years and there's a flare-up pretty
20
much every year.
years.
And whosoever is so fortunate as to be affected with the gout, he ought to use no means to repel it, or be rid of it, but patiently to endure the fit. When a man after 50 falls into the gout, his friends come about him. They make a feast, and rejoice at this hopeful prolongation of his life, and the probable addition of 20 or 30 years to it. Personally, I think that's insane, and
Yes.
it's just better not.
He's absolutely correct. Like that is crazy. This is crazy. I feel like this is just cope. I do. I feel like or like projection or trying to turn this into something better. eh, Even though like it sounds like this sucks. It sounds like this sucks to have. Like if you get this, you're gonna be in pain. You're gonna be uncomfortable, and that seems like that's really crappy. And I would not want this.
Of 20 or 30 years to it. Personally, I think that's insane, and it's just better not to have gout in the first place, which is
True.
why I take a page from the book of the Reverend Sidney Smith of the 19th century, who suggests that the sufferer must enter into a solemn pact with his stomach to relinquish all serious flirtation with the sirens of the kitchen and the houris of the wine cellar.
I love this. I love how people used to write. I know I say this a lot. I say this like every other video, but I do. I love it. It's like with such personality and like, I don't know, passion or something in it. It's just it's cool. I love it. I wish people still had this kind of flair when they wrote about things.
Serious flirtation with the sirens of the kitchen and the houris of the wine cellar. That said, I am about to indulge in a dish that flies in the face of that exact advice. A dish of roast venison with wine sauce. So slice up your venison, then add a bit of the sauce, as well as a good amount of salt on top. And here we are.
It
Roast
looks
venison
good though.
from
It looks
1723.
delicious.
Let's taste.
Mm-hmm.
Hmm,
Oh yeah, it's good.
that's good. So the meat is perfect. It's just
Yeah.
really nice and soft. But the flavor that I love is coming from the sauce. It's wine sauce, but it's not like super wine. It's not really forward on the wine. You get so many of the other flavors in there. The rosemary also really comes through, which wasn't in the sauce, but in the meat itself. That sauce could actually go on pretty much anything. I'm going to just get a little.
I mean that sauce looks like it's really, really good as far as like everything that's in it. This whole combination looks like it's delicious.
That sauce could actually go on pretty much anything. I'm going to just get a little sauce here.
Oh yeah, it's
Yeah, it could
good.
go on a lot of things. You could also
Yeah.
make it with a different kind of wine, like reduce the amount of sugar and sub in port. That would be really, really nice. Port was actually kind of thought to be the liquor that gave you gout the worst, so that would
Oh,
be
there you
appropriate
go.
for this. I have to
Perfect.
say, I'm not sure that the larding of the meat did very much. I can't really tell. I mean, it's nice and tender and flavorful, so maybe it did. But I think that if you had a bigger piece of meat, it would have been more necessary because it would have had to cook for a lot longer, so the fat would have really melted and gone through. But since I only had
That's
the
a good
tenderloin
point.
and it only needed 10 minutes of cooking rather than, 40 minutes or something like that, I'm not sure that it was necessary. But regardless, if you make the venison, make the sauce because the sauce is absolutely fantastic and it's really easy. It doesn't take very long.
Yeah, the sauce actually looks really easy. I mean, I feel like that sauce, like based on the ingredients that I saw that goes in it, I feel like you could put it on a lot of things. Like it'd probably go good with pork or chicken or, like you can, or like add rice or something with it, like underneath, like get some rice, chicken, some of that wine sauce. I don't know. I feel like wine sauce goes good with so much stuff though.
And make the sauce because the sauce is absolutely fantastic and it's really easy, doesn't take very long. And yeah, have a wonderful, happy new year, and I will see you next
Aw.
time on Tasting History.
I love this. This was really interesting. And the whole gout situation, totally crazy. So crazy, but loved it. This is a great video. This looks absolutely delicious. Let me know if you've tried this one because I know I think this is an older video too. So let me know if you've made this or if you at least made the sauce. Let me know. What did you put it on? Everything. Just tell me everything. Thank you so much for hanging out. I really appreciate you guys being here. Be sure to go and like and subscribe to Tasting History with Max Miller. He does such an amazing job. That's going to do it for me. I hope you guys have a great day, and I will see you in the next one.